Hello, Washoe County Library System welcomes you to our monthly series from the Nevada Historical Society, presents High Noon with Neal Cobb. This afternoon's topic is about the history of model dairy by Neal Brooks. My name is Samantha, and I'm so happy to be here with you today. And now I would like to introduce Sherry Hayes Zorn with the Nevada Historical Society. Again, welcome and thank you.
Thank you, Samantha, and thank you everybody for coming today for our High Noon series, Shootout with Neal Cobb. At the moment, Neal has a conflict today and might pop in a little bit later. If not, I'm filling in for our wonderful host. Neal is such a great historian and a lover of all Nevada history, and he has done a great job over the years for us, helping us get great topics and finding interesting speakers. So we always appreciate and want to acknowledge Neal supporting the Nevada Historical Society. And like Samantha said, we've got programming scheduled out through August, and we have information on our website, and I know the library should have that up to date here anytime now. So without further ado, let me introduce our wonderful speaker. His name is Neal Brooks. Mr. Brooks, you probably have maybe heard a version or have heard some of his talks in the past, but they've been updating them, and it's going to be a great presentation. His talk will be on the history of model dairy in Reno. Neal is a fifth generation Nevadan and was born in Reno back in September 29th, 1932. And during our conversation before the program started, we were all talking about how the Reno has changed, and Neal was commenting it's definitely changed since when he was young. Neal attended Anderson, Billinghurst, and Reno High School and graduated in 1950. And then he went on to UCLA, graduating from college back in 1954. Afterwards, he was drafted in the Army and was with the occupational forces in Salzburg, Australia, and in Berlin, Germany. Neal and his wife, they had 4 children, 4 grandchildren, and 2 great-grandchildren, and 1 on the way in the next week or so. So without further ado, let me introduce our wonderful speaker, Mr. Neal Brooks. Neal.
Thank you very much for that introduction. And what we're looking at right now is a panoramic view of the model dairy from Peckham Lane. This picture was taken in the mid-1930s. And we're not unique in the sense of there were thousands of people that came through the Truckee Meadows throughout the years. Some stayed, many of them moved on because of mining and whatever. But we'll be talking about the individuals, 2 pioneer families that came here and eventually evolved into the model dairy. I'll look here, and what I want to do is introduce the 2 families, and we'll start with the Peckham family. And George E. Peckham was born on March 8, 1851 in Fall River, Massachusetts. But in September of 1854, a cholera epidemic took the lives of his father and a younger sister. In September of 1860, George and his mother, Caroline Sherman Peckham, moved to San Francisco via the Isthmus of Panama, a trip of some 38 days. In April of 1864, George's mother was offered a job as a cook in lumbering operation in Galena, Nevada. Her rate of pay was to be $50 a month, which was double the amount she received in the Bay Area. Once in Galena, George Peckham earned his way by delivering mail over a daily route of some 25 miles on foot. Then in December of 1865, Caroline Peckham married T.W. Norcross, a widower with 2 sons. And the Norcross family was also a notable pioneer family. From this marriage, 2 sons, Charles and Frank, were born. Both sons also had distinguished careers. T.W. Norcross was always impressed with George Peckham's work ethic. So when George reached majority age, Mr. Norcross awarded him 80 acres of farmland in southeast Truckee Meadows. George soon acquired an additional 80 acres, and the Peckham Ranch was established and Peckham Lane was named in his behalf. And George Peckham then married Emma Shepherd in 2/10/1876. From this union, Harriet was born on 1/26/1880, the fourth of 7 children. And C.W. Brooks, the grandparents, was Edwin and Ruth Taylor. They were married on February 12, 1856. Both were natives of Forest Lake, Pennsylvania. They departed Forest Lake on 4/18/1861 on an overland trip to Indian Valley, California. That's near Quincy, California. Azalea Taylor, their firstborn child at 4 years of age, also accompanied them. Now, Ruth Taylor maintained a daily diary of the entire trip, and they arrived in Indian Valley on September 13th, 1861 at Edwin's brother's ranch. Edwin's brother, Joe Taylor, had moved there some 15 years before, and the community was named Taylorsville on his behalf. Now, when Azalea Taylor became an adult in 1876, she married a John Brooks. Their only child was C.W. Brooks, was born on August 29th, 1881 in Taylorsville. After some 22 years of ranching, they moved to Reno in the 500 block on Humboldt Street. When the city grew close to them, they moved again. I guess he didn't like neighbors that close, but West Taylor Street was named in their behalf. C.W. Brooks had moved to Reno and lived with his grandparents to complete his education. So Harriet Peckham and C.W. Brooks were married on January 1, 1904. They established Model Dairy in 1906. From this union, 6 children were born, 1 son and 5 daughters. So now we have the family names and the people that the forerunners for Model Dairy. So here we have a picture of Harriet Peckham and C.W. Brooks. Those were the marriage pictures. Here we have 331 Moran Street, and this home still exists. It consists of 3 parcels of land. This location served as a distribution center of all Model Dairy products over the many years. Now, the family moved into this home in approximately 1912. And this is a picture, a different view. I took this picture some 6 or 7 years ago. And that house would be ideal if they could get somebody to take it on and restructure it so it would look very much today. This is a trolley service, the Burke Addition. What was happening is Wells Avenue was named after what they called the Wells Addition, and that was a break of land that was being developed over time. The housing was growing very fast. And then the Burke Addition also was being developed, and the trolley service was added in 1909, giving the residents of the Wells Addition and the Burke Addition easy access to the downtown Reno area. The trolley ran from like Commercial Road down Virginia Street, then it turned onto Moran Street, and then it ran until Wells Avenue and it turned south. So that was the transportation at a very early stage. Here we have the old V&T track that's parallel to Holcomb Avenue on the right side and Center Street on the left. And these rails were being taken out from the V&T tracks, no longer was in service. Here we have a picture of my dad riding with his father, C.W. Brooks, in the early milk delivery days. The first model dairy site was located at the Clow Ranch at the end of 7th Street. Here, with a few Holstein cows, 2 milkmen, Brooks began the dairy operation. Of course, there wasn't any mechanical help at that time, so they keep the milk cool. They had to haul in ice by hand and to avoid spoilage. And that was not an easy project. And all milk deliveries in the early days were strictly to the home customers, and transportation was by means of horse and wagons. This picture represents a delivery wagon showing permit number 1 at 331 Moran Street. Facilities consisted of a refrigeration building, an office, and 2 garages for delivery units, plus the residence. This is a home delivery time in the winter time, and the sign on the carriage shows a City of Reno milk permit. And the container, the milk container, was a 3-gallon can with a measuring pouring spout used to pour contents in containers provided by the customer. So it was very frequent that you would go to the back of the house, have a screened-in porch, and you would put in pour the milk into containers furnished by the customer. Here we just have 4 milk delivery guys. And I would mention at this time that in 1914, Brooks introduced the first motorized milk delivery system in Nevada. More than one family bought milk from him just to see his overland truck stopped in front of their house. However, the first trucks didn't offer much comfort, had no cab, no fenders. So the comfort was an issue. During the winter, of course, it didn't have that cab either. This is a picture in 1924 of a model dairy parade float being built by the Horgan brothers. Shown here are Jack, Bill, and Tom Horgan, who were close neighbors living on Moran Street. The Horgan family founded a commercial hardware business. The commercial hardware business was huge in the early days and formation of the Reno area. And this family was a very well-known pioneer family, the Horgans. And this is just a picture of a cooling system bottling and the capping unit. That's my dad at the helm. And this is a picture of 331 Moran Street. And this is a picture of my mother on that. That garage in the back was built by C.W. Brooks, housing the delivery trucks that they had. Here we have a picture taken in the family room at 331 Moran Street. And many family events were held at this location. So in this location, the grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins with family names of Gadda, Sanford, Lyons, Marsh, Haley, Brooks, and Peckham. And I'd point out that one missing person was John Sanford. Why he wasn't there, I'm not sure. But he served as the editor of the Reno Evening Gazette in the late 1930s and early 1940s. And Jim Lyons is not in the picture. And he had a gas station that served for many, many years at the corner of California Avenue and South Virginia Street. And my oldest brother is not in there, and somehow I missed that. There are those, however, that will argue that I was there. And the evidence is, if you look at that little table in the front, right there, you see something looks like a ball, but further left, there's a beer bottle there. And they say that's the evidence. And I can assure you, at that age, I wasn't yet drinking the beer. Here we have what we call trade-in. It's trade-in day out with the Model Ts and then with the Model As on Calavada Auto Company. So here we have Anderson School, and it's an 1887, 1888 school year. And there are numbers on here above the individuals. One is Mary Steiner, the teacher, Neal Eade, whose family is still well known in this area also, and Pearl Morton, who married John Clappy, another great, well-known pioneer family, the Clappy Ranch on the Truckee River, and also Harriet Peckham, which would be my grandmother. If I can point, that would be my grandmother. I'm not sure if you could be identifiable there. That one right there. You got it. Thank you. Now we have Anderson School, 1937. And you can see the size of that class. You can see on the far left, the girl, Kathleen Capurro. And then you have going on down across beyond Corano. They had a ranch where now Virginia Lake is. And then Miss Lucas was a teacher, and she had no transportation. But in those days, she would go out, cross the street, hold up her purse, and nobody ever would pass her without giving her a ride. And the next one is Don Peckham, my cousin, and he was Washoe County assessor for many years. And then I have two brothers in the bottom row. I wasn't in that picture. I wasn't old enough yet to be a part of the program. But here we are. Now that you can see Henderson School in 1939, and the class size has grown substantially. And what was happening is that on Airport Road, housing development was taking place. And also Home and Gardens, which was a housing development just off Peckham Lane. And those two functions created a larger participation in the school system. And down on the bottom row, the very the very last person on that row, a boy by the name of Harry Muse, and he had an affliction where he didn't have any hair, born without hair, and never had it. And I'm standing next to him. As you can see, I eventually caught up with Harry in the hair division. But by the size of the class, it just grows very well. Here we have an item which has absolutely no historic significance. And I'll identify the person on the bottom row on the left hand, Maurice Petrie, who's in the Washoe County system for many years, became principal at Hug High School. Next to him, holding the ball, Dan Jenkins, is a contractor still working in Gardnerville. And I'm standing in the row above them in the middle position. Looks like I was wondering what the heck's going on. And I probably didn't know. Here we have an aerial photograph of Rwana Farms, which was home of the model dairy. Hubbard Field is the up in the upper right. Can we move that? That would be the airport. Hubbard Field in the background, and you could see what the home of the housing and the corrals and the haystacks, and there's 300 acres of land there for the Rwana Farms, and that was the home of the model dairy. And so everything that was produced there ended up at 331 Moran Street for distribution to the public. Here we have Peckham Lane with black willows forming the canopy over the Peckham Lane. It was one of the most beautiful sights you could see in the springtime. These were planted by Georgie Peckham, black willows, and I wish they were still there. Here we have the silos being built in the year the early 1920s. At that time, they had like 130 cows in order to provide feed for the animals. It probably was overbuilt, and we move on. This is just another one, what the weather has done to the land. At times, we seem to get more moisture at that times, and but eventually things change. And this is just another side view where you have the trucks and the cows. And this was a typical winter scene at the dairy. Again, this is just another view, delivery trucks and delivery men. And in 1934, a fire burned down the dairy, and eventually later on that was replaced and rebuilt. And this is just one picture looking south, and this is just looking north. Luckily, the barn was not taken down, and which was a blessing for them. Then the decade of the 1930s was a time of rapid change and progress for model dairy. A milk pasteurization process was initiated in 1932, and a bacteria testing system was put into use. This time, my model had some of the best bred Holstein cows on the Pacific coast. Now, in 1933, a new dimension of service in the Reno community, and that was where wholesale distribution to grocery stores and restaurants began. Model products and the dairy began buying milk from regional suppliers to augment their milk supply. And in the mid 30s, Model installed a new processing machine, one for a new complex unit to produce wax-covered paper cartons. Model was the second on the West Coast of use of a sealed cap on milk glass bottles, assuring fresh and sanitary milk. Model further modernized the bottling process when it adopted the first rotary filling and capping machine in the Reno area. Another first came by demanding health examinations for all its employees with the aid and cooperation of the Nevada Department of Health. This next picture is just the entrance modeled area with the brick pillars. And C.W. Brooks, he was a mason before he got involved in the dairying business, so he built these pillars to give it some different view. Here we have an early barnyard, corrals, haystacks in the background. And this is in the early picture was in 1930. And where you see the two girls standing right behind them is a scale for weighing farmers bringing hay in for the cows, and they'd get weighed coming in and going out, and they were paid by the weight of the hay. Here we just have the three mothers, a picture of the house that finally lived in. And here we have a cow with twin calves, and behind them is Gertrude Sanford, my cousin, and then us three brothers. I was the youngest of them. And here we have the three brothers with Brownie, our horse, and off to the right-hand side is Rattlesnake Mountain. And here you have to have a dog. On a ranch, you just have to have a dog. Again, the dog just gives emphasis as to the size of this animal. It was part St. Bernard and part Doberman Pinscher, but great dog. It had the St. Bernard attitude, just a beautiful dog. Here we have my maternal grandfather, who lived on the ranch after his mother passed away. He was a miner, but he had a great attitude with raising different birds and geese and guinea hens and peacocks. And in time, we would get the green hens that would come because Cochrane Creek ran through and was the irrigation source. And they would stick around. We'd have 40 green heads year round. I mean, this picture I just threw in there to show that I had maternal grandparents as well. Both my grandparents, maternal grandparents, were born in Virginia City, and could see grandfather he was a miner, and you can see where he's circled in red there is his picture. My mother also was born in Virginia City. Here's a scene that I call something that's run amok. And you can see the Cochrane ditch was flooding at this time. Later on, this got dug out, and a bridge that would cross to where there's some were houses. Here's a picture of my dad on a bucking horse, and I argued with him. I told him I could do that. And finally he gave in. Well, you probably guessed it by now, it's a stuffed animal. My grandfather just showing off a bull. And we were always warned people, you don't do this with mature bull. They have a different attitude. So you had to be a little careful with them. And this is plowing the fields, and you can see the Rattlesnake Mountain in the background. And this was Caterpillar tractors. One was owned by the Rwana farms and one by the Peckham Ranch, which was across the street. But they would share work to get the fields plowed for pasture land. Here we have a picture with my dad and my mother, and with family hands that lived on the ranch. Some housing was provided. So it was a close operation. It's a picture of my mother. And somehow I have that picture in a postcard format. And I don't know how they did it, but it looks like it's done in Virginia City before they moved to Reno. And my grandfather just with his car with a Rattlesnake Mountain in one of the fields being plowed. This is what we call Aggie Day at the University of Nevada in 1925. The Ag building in the background, now called the Frampton Building, housing the English department. It's a picture of my dad in a heifer. You can get the idea how involved that the university was involved in ranching and dairying. And this was, of course, no longer done, having Dairy Day there, but it was a big deal back in the day. This is an invitation of an Aggie Day in 1925. That invitation would go out, and it's a field day in 1929. This is a prize Holstein. Model day herds consisted of registered Holstein, Friesian, and Guernsey cows. The average production per cow was 11,000 pounds of milk per year. This compares to the United States average of 4,500 pounds of milk per year. So to give you an idea of feeding properly and getting the right purebreds, what you could do with a herd of cows. To give emphasis as to the involvement of the university and the community, here we have the Dairy Day, Washoe County, 1924. And this picture was taken at Rwana Farms, home of Model Dairy. And the picture from left to right are, you have Alf Peckham, partner, Clarence Thornton, county agent, And these people are all well known in the community. Then you have Cecil Creel, head of the Extension Service, University of Nevada. Then you have Fred Balzar, governor of Nevada. Thomas Buckman, assistant director, Extension of Service. W.E. Clark, president, University of Nevada. Then you have J.C. Durham, chairman of county commissioner. And then you have V.E. Scott, head of dairy department, University of Nevada. And the last person is C.W. Brooks, as a partner. Now, these functions were expected to have at least 150 people attending a dairy day, field day at the Rwana farm. The programs would begin with the calf calling contest, followed by inspection of feeding corrals, judging contests, and a judging demonstration. After a visit to the milk barn and bottling room, the dairy demonstrations will be held and a prize calf will be awarded to the winner of the judging contest. I don't know what you do if you lived in an apartment, what the heck you would do with that prize calf. Later on, there was a world famous herd sale, one of the largest ever held in Southern California, in which Professor Scott accompanied the Brooks Peckham dairymen who purchased 25 head of purebred Holsteins. One of the cows purchased produced 14,749 pounds of milk per year as a 3-year-old. The herd was considered one of the finest on the West Coast. Here we have, a picture of dehorning day at the ranch. Here you can see that they're taking the horns off of the heifers at this stage. That's my dad has got the clippers that were cut on. My brother Boyd is on the lever, holding the neck straight so that they wouldn't be jerked or whatever. And if you were to look real hard, you might find me ghosted in the background, wondering what I was supposed to be doing. This is the older milking parlor that was built after the 1934 fire, housing 30 cows with the milkers. Here we have a picture in 1941. The dairy was inspected by the Reno Rotary, as noted by the Gazette Journal. It says eating in the barn where the cows are milked, members of the Reno Rotary Club enjoyed a luncheon yesterday at the model dairy as guests of Ernest Brooks, newly elected president of the club. Tony Pachetti furnished accordion music during the luncheon, and Brooks spoke briefly on dairy issues. The luncheon was served by the YWCA. George Seary of Silver State Bakery cooked it, and John Blum of the Nevada Packing Company cooked it. And John Blum of the Nevada Packing Company furnished the meat. Members of the club took the opportunity to inspect the dairy plant. Hugh Hurd presided at the meeting. Now, how could you beat that? Hugh Hurd presiding at a dairy function. Here we have Tony Pachetti. All these people were well known in the community. Tony Pachetti played the accordion and had his own place on Commercial Row, but also that you had Lou Heimers, who did caricatures of people in the local newspaper titled Seen About Town. from 1939 to 1944. It portrayed were businessmen, politicians, or any notable seen around town that particular day. So what would happen is in the Reno Gazette, you would get every week a picture of 8 to 10 people as to who Lou Heimers had seen during that week, and that would be published in the newspaper. Here we have 4 guys, well-known guys, and they were all ranchers, sitting in the car with his feet dangling over the side of the car was Fritz White, who was a retired major in the U.S. Army and then became a consultant in the casino industry later on. The next one standing is Ernest Clappy, well-known farmer, served as many areas. He became a county commissioner. His farming was noted well by everybody. His ranch was on the Truckee River, approximately on the crossing the McCarran Bridge, and on that side of the road going east was the Clappy Ranch, the one sitting up tall, Ed Peckham, also the manager of Peckham Ranch, and the last person, Ernest Brooks, who managed the Rwana farm. I often thought, looking at that picture, see that in the paper and wanted to run for political office. Would there be any downside to that? Well, we find at least 2 of those people later ran for public office. Ernest Clappy, sitting in the background, 1939 and 1941 legislature, and the same with Ernest Brooks in the foreground, 1939, 1941 legislature. Here we have a period of time during World War II when war bonds were used to help finance the war. In schools, children were encouraged to buy bonds by contributing 25 cents a week until $18.75 was paid in, and a $25 bond would be issued to the contributor. In this picture, from the left is Glenn Myers, a former school board trustee, Jack Dempsey, former heavyweight boxing champion, and Ernest Brooks, the Washoe County bond chairman. And the girl in the foreground is Will McGatta. The other people I was unable to identify, but you can see that the involvement of the people and the community, the population was small, but you had people in everything doing good for the Reno area. Here you can see the danger of walking in debris. These are cows on the way to the milking parlor. In the 1941 timeframe, the milking parlor was redesigned with a totally enclosed system whereby no human intervention was required. As cows were being milked, the milk itself went through a filtering system and then directly into pasteurization unit. Once pasteurized, then the milk is immediately cooled to the design temperature and then bottled and capped in glass containers and was ready for customer consumption. The new milking parlor designed increased capacity to milk 40 cows per hour and produce 40,000 gallons per month. A further comment, for every quart of milk marketed, 8 bottles are in circulation, and bottle loss was as high as 20%. So the cows in the milking parlor, an item by the Nevada State Journal dated May 21 under the heading Around Town. Excuse me just a minute. If anybody doubts that the milkmen around here have at least reached a peak and complicated way of life, all he needs to do is to read the homogenized milk container put out by Model Dairy. It used to be that the milking was done in the barn and the milk was taken to the kitchen. Eating was done in the dining room, and afterward, the family sat in the living room. When company came, the children were sent to bed, and the entertainment was done in the parlor. The model container says, visit our milking parlor. Bring the children. Now, I can tell you personally that there was no acoustics, and had occasionally some anxious moments, but for both the cows and the milker. But the kids really enjoyed the experience. If you'll notice, there are glass bubbles that indicate if the cow is still giving milk. The milker works in a sunken pit with 4 cows on each side and allows the milker to wash and clean 4 cows while the other 4 cows are being milked. The milking machines are on a vacuum system. So if one should be kicked off, all the others would fail. So you had to be on your toes, be sure you got it before they all fell off. This is just a look at the pasteurization units themselves, what they take, and each one was charted on a chart so that the inspector could come by and make sure that the pasteurization was done for a certain length of time at the right temperature for the sanitation of the milk. And here we have the automatic filling and capping machine. And you can see different sized bottles could be accommodated anywhere from small 1/4 pint bottles to quart bottles. It was pretty fantastic. This is just an odd picture that I dropped in there. This is the Reno wheelman, picture 1900. It has a story all by itself, but just move on. And this was another one that I threw in, Nevada State Line at South Shore. And in the early days, Harvey's casino was located on the left-hand side of this picture. And later, Harris bought in and bought the casinos on the right-hand side. And the sign, Nevada State Line, it had a number of items on it where it says no income tax, no sales tax, no inheritance tax, no death tax, and no incorporation tax. Must have been pretty good in those days. Here we have the demolition of the silos in 1971. And it was done by Martha Newton. And anyway, they came down with the expansion of the airport. The original airport, the runways were east-west, but soon the capacity had to be increased, which it was. but the silos had to come down. They were hazardous, and they were no longer being used at this point anyway. This is just an advertising item. I'm not sure what you would do with this. You could put it on your window in your house, or, but anyway, it didn't last very long. I still have a copy of this. So in 1955, the model dairy operation was taken over by Barry Brooks, Boyd Brooks, and George Horsley. Barry and Boyd are grandsons of C.W. Brooks, and George is married to Wilma Gada Horsley, a granddaughter of C.W. Brooks. With this step, model started the state's first farm tank system, whereby milk was transported from farms to the dairy by large tank, truck, and trailer with a capacity of 5,500 gallons. At this time, model bought exclusively from local producers, from Fallon, from Fernley, from Minden, and the Truckee Meadows and Verdi. So in 1961, a brand new processing plant was built. Following is from the RGJ at that time, the younger generation owners of that time, along with their employees, took somewhat startled to hear Mr. C.W. Brooks. The dairy business has certainly changed a lot since 1906. It's a lot simpler now. And he definitely was correct. Once you stop milking the cows and feeding them and that whole 9 yards, plus the dairy business, you are tied up. Right now, what you see is farmers with 1,000 cows. And you know that the times have changed with the population. This is a picture of what was on Peckham Lane after the remodel. The picture was by Beth Isaiah. With her permission, she allowed me to use this. I'll just show you quickly some of the embossed. This is a pint milk bottle. Here they've got quart bottles now with silk screening. And these were the designs of the bottles. Thank you so much. We're at the end. And I just got to make a comment. As long as I've been around, as you can tell from the very early days, it's weird being the same age as old people. Thank you.
Thank you, Neal. It was a great program. Well, there are several questions that we've gotten from the audience. Can you tell us what was your job at the dairy when you were young?
Well, you learn to do everything. Since I was the youngest, I always say that I got the worst job. But when I was in high school, you always had to provide days off for certain things. I always got the one that was the milking of the cows. So in high school, when you're a senior and you have to go home at 1:30 in the morning to bring the cows in for milking, it wasn't a fun Friday, Saturday night.
So you were mentioning the farm. So did you guys actually live at 331 Moran, or did you live on the farm, or?
We lived on the farm, but
Oh, okay.
the distribution center was the grandfather and his family.
Oh, okay. Okay.
That was
So so I'm sorry to interrupt you. I was gonna say, I noticed there was another question, and somebody wanted to know, did you marry a Reno high school classmate, or um, uh, we were just curious.
no.
So, oh, okay,
No, I did not.
okay. Um, there's another question. Where does the name Rwana come from with the farm? Do you know what the name means?
Well, it started out, as I understand it, Reno, Washoe,
Oh,
Rwana, Nevada.
oh, okay. That's cool. Well,
But
I'll have
it's
to
like
read about that myself.
well, it's kind of a duplicate of what the high school yearbook
Yeah,
too. High
I was gonna
school.
say it's kind of similar to the high school book. Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking too. There was another question. Who was Hugh Hurd? He said he talked. Yeah, I said, who was Hugh Hurd? He talked at the luncheon. The luncheon picture is priceless.
Well, Hurd and Short was a clothier company.
Okay.
He was a member of Rotary Club, and he did the you want to say the he was the one that was conducting the program, you know,
Oh,
Hugh
okay.
Hurd. Yeah.
Okay.
That makes, you know, yeah.
Okay.
I thought it was, you know, kind of unique that you have somebody with the last name of Hurd being in the dairy business. You know?
I did too. So there's another question. When did the airport take over your family's land? You know, because you said that the place was sold out in 77. And you had mentioned, we were discussing, you know, that the silos had to be taken down because they were too tall for the airport. So do you know when, I guess, they took over the land?
Well, they bought the land, and I think at that time they were out of the dairy business. I believe. I think at that time
Okay. Okay.
it was already subdivided, but the actual date of when the airport took off the land, I wasn't. I don't remember. I wasn't a part of
Okay.
it. I mean, by that time, you know, I was gone and doing my thing.
Okay. Okay. We do have another question. Was there any reference to the Spanish influenza in your family records? Do you know of any family members getting that, maybe dying, you know, now because we're in a pandemic, and so.
No, I don't know of any connection there
Okay.
with that Spanish flu.
Yeah, I think our family, sorry, I'm granddaughter, there was more of an issue with the cholera epidemic.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I thought it was an interesting question, and the fact, of course, you know, people are dealing with the pandemic today. So I thought that was an interesting question. And well, at the height, I guess, was how many cows did Model Dairy own? I know you were saying that, you know, when they redid the barn or the parlor, you know, it was at least 100. Do you know what the max number of cows they had?
At one time, I believe there was 200,
Okay.
but as time went on, you know, that's a big chore to try to produce all the milk. it was being outgrown. It had
Okay.
to go out, and those farmers would have, like I say, huge numbers. They didn't do any of the dairying, the bottle and the distribution. So that just phased that aspect out, actually.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Went to to housing, yeah.
Well, yeah, it's a lot of cows to manage. So I was curious. So I think I've asked all of your questions, and everybody just said it was a wonderful talk, and we're really impressed with the presentation and you sharing your family photos. So thank you so much. It was lovely, and I'm glad I got to see the new version. So thank you everybody for coming to today's program, and we'll give it back to the library, back to Samantha.
Yes, thank you all for joining us today. Thank you, Sherry Hayzorn and Neal Cobb, even though he couldn't make it today, and Neil Brooks with the Nevada Historical Society, and Russell, our Washoe County Library tech wizard, for making this event possible. Don't forget to sign up for the next live event with the Nevada Historical Society on Thursday, April 15th at 12 p.m. The topic will be the origin and evolution of the Basque Hotel by Michael Fisher. To sign up, please visit events.washoecountylibrary.us. What's coming up? You can visit us at events.washoecountylibrary.us, where you can also access and download our Virtual Explorer, which is a publication of all our virtual events and resources. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Until next time.
Thank you guys so much.
You're very welcome. Thank you. Have a great day. See you guys next month, and thank you.